Less than 3 weeks away from the, fingers crossed, scheduled start of training camp, and Tiers Week continues here on Fantasy Football Today. Welcome back, everybody. Thanks so much for listening. Don't forget to leave a nice Apple Podcast review. Really appreciate it. I'd also like to address one of the negative Apple Podcast reviews that we received, something that I think is worth addressing, so I will do that. Today, we're going to talk about some high-risk...
Well, do that now. Come on. Don't save that for the end.
Okay, I'll do it in just a moment. High-risk, high-reward players and food items. I asked, like, what's a high risk, high reward food? I got like 250 responses or something crazy like that. So we can go through some of those. But
amazing, everybody has opinions on food.
Yeah. That's like, I guess I should just be talking and tweeting about food. Will make me more popular. All right, Jamie, you want me to address it?
Yes.
Well, it's kind of your fault.
Okay.
Is it Jamie interrupting Adam a lot? Because that's already happened now.
No, it's somebody really didn't like the Azer analytics where I sort of, I'll read you what it said. 2 stars. Stop using Azer analytics. I can't pinpoint exactly why I rated this show a 2, but yet I listen to it every day. All the analysts are solid, 5 out of 5, but it's really strange mixing in objective statistical analysis with Azer's when you eliminate his first and last game on even-numbered years in which a full moon occurred inside, etc. But I really want to.
This is my fault?
Because you call me out on it all the time and you exaggerate it like so much. I truly do these things to give what I believe are the most representative sample sizes. So, like, I'm not going to give you Josh Allen's 16-game pace when he barely threw 5 passes in week 17. I'm going to give you his 16-game pace based on the first 15 games. I'm not going to, there are other examples of that.
Here's how you should phrase that, though. Here's Josh Allen and what he did in the fantasy season. But
that only works for him. I'm just saying that I've been trying to, it helps me anyway, to compare 16-game paces. So I figured it would be helpful. So that's what I do a lot. And when you do that, I often remove games where players left early with injury. I almost always do. So I think that's very important. I'm not trying to make a personal opinion by manipulating statistics. So I promise you, everybody, when I do that is truly for your benefit. Mark Ingram.
I like when you do it.
Yeah, well, you like it because you like to tease me. Mark Ingram left week 16. He played like 40% of the snaps. I don't really want to count that as part of his pace. I think you get better representation of his pace if you look at 14 games for him instead of 15,
What is your typical cutoff, though, when you eliminate a game? Is he only played a quarter? Is he only played a half? 3 quarters?
Yeah.
Like, what do you throw out?
I mean, less than a half out. That's
what would you use a half and divide the number by 14.5?
Because that's just kind of like, I don't know.
Could you please calculate Matt Breida's 2019 16-game pace for me, please?
I don't know. Why?
Because he left like 7 games.
Yeah, the difficult guy with that, who is it that... Oh, James Conner. Like, before this show, I put together a spreadsheet of 24 running backs, the top 24 in Dave's tiers that we'll get to, and the amount of touches they had based on 16 games, Azerfied, removing some, partial games.
I assume you removed the time that Jordan Howard was beating out Miles Sanders? Okay.
So for Miles Sanders, and that's the thing. Like, that's a great example, right? For Miles Sanders, I have him at 318 touches, which ranked 12th. And that is only 6 games. Before, it says that was without Jordan Howard and not including week 17 when he got hurt, left with an injury. So yes, I understand it sounds silly, but I truly believe that when you are trying to think about how many touches Miles Sanders is going to get, those 6 games are the ones that really matter and the ones that we should be using to make our best guesses.
Do you give Josh Jacobs his week 2, I think it was? Week 2 game against the Chiefs when I think he played a half, but he had 12 carries for 99 yards in the half?
I did do that, but maybe I shouldn't have. And there are ones that I'm going to miss, unfortunately. Jacobs, by the way, came out pretty high on this. He was 11th, 323 touches, including that game. So he probably would have been even higher. His 16-game pace was 323 touches. And, one of the things when I looked at these touches is like, Why do people like Nick Chubb? Some do, some don't. Why do people like Nick Chubb more than Josh Jacobs? Jacobs was on pace for more touches. And that's if I used the 8 games with Kareem Hunt. So that's but that's, what would you use for Nick Chubb? Would you use the full 16? Would you look at just the games with Kareem Hunt? I think the ones with Kareem Hunt are more telling, personally.
Well, they're telling because that's what you're expecting to see this year. We're not expecting Kareem Hunt to miss half the year and put Nick Chubb in a position to rack up touches.
So I understand that I'm going to get laughed at for it, but
let's not do running back tiers today. I just want to go through this list, and every player I'd like to know which games of their season you counted and didn't count, and then we'll find games you either should or shouldn't have counted.
Okay.
Like how many of Josh Jacobs' games did you count where he had to share with Jalen Richard and Lynn Bowden?
I had none of them.
Right, because it hasn't happened yet. So we'll see what that does to his touch count.
You know what, though? I kind of feel like Josh Jacobs would have had about the same or more touches, about the same as Nick Chubb. It's just
which Aaron Jones games did you take out?
I didn't take out any Aaron Jones games. He played 16 games.
But he had some games where there was no Jamal Williams.
Yeah,
and some
I could have done that. I could have done that. I know. This is not a perfect exercise, but he's so far down the list. He's 18th on the list.
I get it. So you're taking what you think is going to happen in 2020 and then find the games where it did happen, personnel-wise, in 2019, and then you extrapolate that over 16 games.
So with Austin Eckler, did you only count the games where there was no Melvin Gordon? Since
right. Like that's a tougher one.
I actually have two. I have two numbers. I have
Apple
two.
Review?
I don't know. I have 2 different numbers for Austin Eckler because he was the most difficult one.
How many stars, Jamie?
Who wrote this review?
Who cares?
No, I care. Who wrote it?
I don't know. I'll look. I'll find it.
Because the review may be 2 stars, but the review of the review is 5.
Yeah.
Who wrote it? Let's see. Stop using Azer Analytics. From I don't even think there's a name.
Foss in Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
Anyway, I do my best. I do my very best to give the best data that I can. I don't do
Which games did you use for Raheem Mostert?
His last 5 games. That's
what do you use for Clyde Edwards-Helaire?
Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I used college. No,
Damian Williams is a good one. He missed some time.
So actually, I didn't include the rookies, Dave, in this, obviously. So your top 24 non-rookies. If you want to know who had the most touches, McCaffrey by a mile, Fournette, Dalvin Cook, Zeke, Barkley, Derrick Henry, Carson at number 7. And there you go. Okay, well, anyway, thank you for letting me get that off my chest. I promise I'm not trying to manipulate data. I'm trying to help.
No, thank you for bringing that up. Yes. That was one of my favorite segments in a while.
No, but like, you never really remove games that guys leave with injury, I feel like you should.
I think I am just as
do you like the guy or
does
you do not like the guy?
Yeah, I am just as consistent as you. I do that whenever it helps me make my point.
God, it's not what I do. All right,
when he talks about Gardner Mitchell, that game in London has never been brought up once.
I just talk about his splits in the United States because they're not going to London this year because of COVID. So like what he did over there doesn't really matter.
All right, fair point. All right, so speaking of COVID, we got an interesting development with this face shield. Very cool stuff. The Oakley face shield, the mouth shield, is going to be distributed to teams next week. They claim to have, invented this mouth shield that will be very difficult for droplets to, I guess, get in and out. So that's cool, and hopefully technology can help us along in this whole thing. Meanwhile, this was a great quote. Dan Snyder and Coach Rivera are working closely to develop a new name and design approach that will enhance the standing of our proud, tradition-rich franchise and inspire our sponsors, fans, and community for the next 100 years. And good job by the Washington franchise to list sponsors first, since that was clearly what was the deciding factor in this. And on yesterday's show, it is for us Monday afternoon, but you're hearing it on Tuesday. On Monday's show, we talked about the Red Tails, and what the Red Tails is a nod to the planes flown by the Tuskegee Airmen, an all-black squadron of fighter and bomber pilots who fought in World War II and were the first black military aviators in the United States Armed Forces. That was from Jared Dubin, and that is why I'm rooting for Red Tails. It would be awesome right now. How are you guys?
I'm hanging in there.
Good.
All right, you're going to be pretty hungry at the end of this show. Get a lot of food talk on this one.
As opposed to every other show that I do.
Promotion. Remember to help us out with podcast awards. The link is in the episode description. Remember to watch us tonight, Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern on Twitch, twitch.com/FFtoday. Become a subscriber and have some exclusive opportunities and a chance to be in a Twitch league with us. And we're going to be doing a non-PPR mock draft. And make sure you check out all of our other podcasts, cbssports.com/podcasts. I feel like I've talked a lot, so I'm done for now. Here we go. Your running back tiers. This is from Dave, by the way. There's Dave's tiers. The super elite, Dave, New York style cheese pizza. The unbeatable super elite tier of pizza.
It must be a lot better than the New York style pepperoni pizza I had.
It is. You went to like a tourist trap in Times Square. So, yes. Christian McCaffrey, Ezekiel Elliott, Saquon Barkley, Alvin Kamara, Dalvin Cook. That's it, right? No. Dave has Miles Sanders in this tier. What?
Get him in there.
All right.
I see a path to 1,500 total yards and 10 touchdowns for him.
Not even close to good enough. These other guys are 2,000 total yards, 1,800.
Well, the ones at the top definitely are. I suppose we could make the case for Dalvin Cook to still be in there. I don't know if Dalvin can get to 2,000 total.
Well, if you want me to crunch some math for you, his first 11 games, he was on pace for 2,141 yards.
All right.
Yeah. I bet his 16-game pace was probably pretty close to 1,900, something like that. But we all know about the top five. But you put Miles Sanders in there. Is that just because you think he's a round one guy, or because you really think
he's a round one guy? I think of all the other running backs that are not included in the obvious names, I think he's the one that has the best chance to nail a top 5 finish at running back. Maybe one of the top 5 running backs that get drafted gets hurt. Maybe Dalvin Cook's holdout lasts a lot longer than we think. I think Sanders could jump right into that mix. I think he'll be a first rounder in 2021 as well.
Heath, Jamie, any thoughts?
If I had running back tiers, I think Christian McCaffrey would be tier 1.
I get that. I totally understand, because no one else is you rarely see McCaffrey not go the 1.01. Like, how many Scott Fishbowl drafts were there where McCaffrey wasn't 101? There was one person who reached out on Twitter. Yeah, I don't think it's that many.
Well,
there was one person who reached out who got CMC at 1.03. And I was like, you win. Like, it's a gift from the fantasy gods that you had 2 schmoes in your league.
I don't know if that's scoring format, if that's the case, because, taking Mahomes or Lamar first overall is not a bad play, given what the quarterback scoring is, especially if, Mahomes, given what his accuracy should be. So I think I saw a lot of leagues where McCaffrey wasn't first. It was Mahomes. Some cases it was Jackson. So I think that the 5 guys stand out by themselves. I think Sanders belongs in the next group with guys like Mixon, and depending on format, Henry, Josh Jacobs, Nick Chubb, that next group of guys, Eckler, Drake, that's a, it's probably 6 or 7 deep, but you can still take these guys in the first round. You're going to see them go in the first round. So I don't know if you want to put the first round designation on the reason why somebody should be in one tier or the other, because we're going to see a very heavy running back laden first round. So I think Sanders is great. I think he's got a chance for a big season. I think you're right, Adam. I don't think he has the same upside as the 5 guys in front of him. I would take Mixon over Sanders per se. I would take Jacobs over him in non-PPR. And, again, in PPR, you look at Drake and Eckler and what they're capable of doing. I think they're better than Sanders also. So he's got a huge ceiling, but I don't think putting him in the same category as McCaffrey, Barkley, Zeke, Kamara, and Cook is the right way to go.
Let me just clarify something.
Record. Oh,
yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was not saying, though, that I don't think Sanders has the upside. I was just saying Dave gave a number. I think it was like 16.
No, what you said is what I'm agreeing with. The 2,000 total yards, I don't think he's going to get there.
Okay.
Yeah, even I think that's hard for him to get to, but I think it's going to be hard for a lot of other running backs not named McCaffrey, Barkley, Elliott.
I don't think Sanders gets to 1,800 total yards. I think those other guys do it.
The other guys on the tier.
The other guys that should be in tier 1, which is those first 5 guys.
Yeah, sure. That's fine to say.
And I will say, in non-PPR, I'd have Derrick Henry in tier 1.
I was trying to get that out for the last 60 seconds, but Derrick Henry is absolutely a non-PPR tier 1 running back. And I think Chubb belongs in that group too. And you can probably make the case for Joe Mixon as well.
Okay, yeah, these are strictly PPR tiers. Thank you. I should have clarified that. Okay, I think, yeah, we can move on. But I think, one thing that might be helpful is instead of thinking about rounds with these running backs, maybe we should think about them in terms of auction dollars. Does Miles Sanders come even close to Dalvin Cook in auction values?
No.
And that's a good thing.
Should he? I mean, okay, let's put numbers on it. $200 budget. Christian McCaffrey is what?
70.
I would even
75.
Yeah, I'd be in between those, but over 70. Like if he's the first name nominated, I would go at least 72.
And Dalvin Cook, who's going to be RB5 for many, many people, it would be what?
60.
45 for me.
I'm going to be
45.
closer to 60 than 45, but I think if he were the first name off, I probably would try to get him for like 53.
Okay.
53.
And Heath, I know you're a little concerned about Cook with the injuries.
Well, yeah, I mean, the injuries are a little bit of a concern, and he's probably not going to hold out, but there's still that whole thing too.
Yeah, right there.
There's a lot that could go sideways for Cook, more so than any of these other running backs that we're talking about. At least in August.
That looks like a really gross drink. Is it just a gross bottle?
It's water in a bottle.
Okay, yeah, it looks gross. Green bottle, like green. Green drinks are bad. So, anyway, my question was 70 for Sanders, somewhere 50 to 60 for Cook. How much, or 70 for McCaffrey, sorry. 50, 60 for Cook. How much for Miles Sanders?
I would try to spend below 50, but if I had to go 50, I love him, so I would do it.
36.
Yeah, I would say closer to 50. But I mean, that's, when you start talking about that, $10 drop off is putting him in a different tier.
Okay. All right. Then the next tier, near elite. This would be Chicago style deep dish pizza. It's excellent, but it's clearly not as good as New York. Joe Mixon, Kenyon Drake, Austin Eckler, Derrick Henry, Nick Chubb, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So really, Jamie, I think you probably would just put Sanders in this tier, right? And
yeah, this is where he belongs. I think all these guys have the same type of upside. PPR is a little bit different. Sanders, I think, is in a better situation than Nick Chubb, for example. He's in a better situation, in my opinion, than Derrick Henry. But I think, he's like I said, I like Mixon better than him. I think their numbers by the end of the season, how they get there, are going to be a little bit different, but they're going to be somewhat similar in terms of their total yardage and their touchdowns. The catches should be in Sanders' favor, but I'm hoping Mixon does a little bit more in the passing game. But I think when you look at these guys, that this is the group that has yet to do it on this level yet, or has some risk attached to it. For me, Henry has risk attached to it because of his lack of work in the passing game. So I look at this group as these are the guys that are going to be awesome if you're picking in the back half of round one and the beginning of round two. These are the guys you're going to want to take with your first two picks if you want to go running back. It's a great start. The more I'm drafting toward the back end of round one, the more I like just taking two of these guys. So I'm thrilled to get two of them. Not Edwards-Helaire. He's not in this group for me anymore in the 1-2 turn, just because of the off season. Like we said, a few months ago, if this is going to continue, then, for me, I was going to dial it back, and I've dialed it back with Edwards-Helaire a little bit. So he's not in this group, but I think you look at this tier, this is going to be, great starting options for you, great RB1 options for you. And I think you'll be thrilled to have them. But I think they are all behind the top 5 guys for a reason.
And I think you'll get one of these running backs if you take Michael Thomas or Tyreek Hill or Devontae Adams, not necessarily in that order, just spouting names, with your first pick. You just can't ignore the wide receiver. You love him. You want that safe value. So you get Thomas in round 1, and then someone like Drake, Eckler, the guys we're mentioning right now, they're your round 2 pick. You start receiver, running back, and your team's off and running.
all right, the names again: Mixon, Drake, Eckler, Derrick Henry, Nick Chubb.
Henry in PPR. Henry won't be there in non-PPR.
He'll be in a tier above that.
Clyde the non-PPR second tier is Drake, Jacobs, Eckler, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And remember that first tier is very deep in non-PPR.
Heath, you have any reaction to this?
I mean, I hate Dave for making me say Clyde Edwards-Helaire is a bust, but this is the type of ranking and tiering of Clyde Edwards-Helaire that makes me put him in my busts. I'm not at all certain what his workload's going to be at the start of the season. I think most of these guys, except for Eckler and maybe even Eckler, but most of these guys are pretty much locked into close to 275, 300 touches. And I would put Sanders in this tier. I don't like Joe Mixon as much as everyone else. I would probably have him one tier lower, but he's right on the border. He'd either be at the end of this tier or the start of the next one.
Why is Josh Jacobs not in this tier? I know he's in tier 2 in non-PPR. This is PPR. But again, I'll make the Nick Chubb comparison. I mean, the numbers in terms of carries, catches, they seem like they're pretty similar. Jacobs was a total workhorse. And yards per carry almost identical too. What's the difference for you, Dave? Why Chubb in this tier but not Jacobs?
I'm a little worried about the Raiders bringing back Richard and adding Bowden. And maybe that means that they want to try and get some of those gadgety type of plays from running backs into their offense. I think adding Ruggs it'll help Jacobs in that he's going to force the safeties to play back, and it'll hurt Jacobs in that they'll probably pass a little bit more. And I think they'll be a little bit more effective throwing the football. I was thinking about getting Derek Carr in the Scott Fish Bowl, and I did get him as my third quarterback. And at first I was really unhappy with it. And then I sat and thought about the Raiders and how they may go this year. And I started to warm up to him a little bit. I was happy that I got him to be my third quarterback. And I expect the Raiders to probably lean a little bit away from the run based on what they've done this offseason.
Adam, I'm totally with you. I would take Jacobs over Chubb. I think they profile very similar. I think the added offensive weapons are going to help Jacobs because I think there'll be more scoring opportunities because I do think this offense will be better. So I love the option of what Jacobs is going to bring. I hope he can get to that 30 catch threshold. You wonder if the 3 games that he missed last year, he was at 20 catches, would he have gotten, the 3 per game to get there, whatever the case may be. And he played the second half of the Chiefs game as well, if you want to manipulate that. But I think Jacobs, to me, is a guy that in his sophomore season is going to take a step forward. Still a very good offensive line. I hope he's healthy. That's something that I think you have to be concerned about. But for me, again, PPR, non-PPR, I'm taking him over Henry and Chubb this year.
Okay. So a lot of those guys are going to go in round 2. Some of them will sneak into round 1. Let's go to our next group. This would be the high-risk, high-reward group. Couldn't really think of a good food. Thankfully, Twitter had me covered. And Chris Towers, actually, on our own staff, I think had the best option. High-risk, high-reward. Cheese fries. This is the cheese fries tier. If the fries are still crispy, they are God tier. If the fries get soggy, they are inedible. I think that's a great call. So this is cheese fries. These guys could be just great or they could be soggy and gross. Aaron Jones, Chris Carson, Josh Jacobs, James is a big tier. James Conner, Melvin Gordon, Todd Gurley. Aaron Jones, Chris Carson, Josh Jacobs, James Conner, Melvin Gordon, Todd Gurley.
And I'm the outlier on Jacobs, apparently, that I'm not putting him high enough. So, and he'll probably get drafted before everybody else in this tier. So maybe for the sake of this argument, we pull Jacobs out of it. Since
this is exactly where I'd have Jacobs.
In PPR, right? Non-PPR is a different story, but in full PPR, I'm worried about those catches not being there. I think other running backs in this tier can, not all of them, but Connor, Gordon, Gurley could catch up to him a little bit because of it.
All right, Heath, weigh in on it then, because Jacobs is going to go ahead of these guys. Maybe not Aaron Jones, but he's going to go ahead of Carson, Connor, Gordon, and Gurley.
And I think that's fine. Like you said, we're talking more probably about auction values and where they go in the draft. If he's at the very top of this tier and he goes right behind all those other guys in the last tier, I don't know how much it matters, but I do think he's closer to this group. Like, I don't think Josh Jacobs is injury prone. I'm not trying to say that, but one of the things we talked about before last season was at Alabama, we really hadn't seen him handle a workhorse role. He got it last year and he almost made it the whole year. We've seen Nick Chubb go over 320, 330 touches in a season. So nothing against Josh Jacobs at all. In non-PPR, he'd be in the higher tier for me. The one guy, of course, in PPR that I would have in this tier that nobody else would because everybody hates him and maybe he's just terrible in a slug is Le'Veon Bell. But I do think he fits into the high risk, high reward. If he gets 300 touches again, he's probably going to be a lot better and be a top 10 running back.
He's literally the first name on the next tier. So it's as close as you can get for me, but I'm nervous about Le'Veon getting even as much work as he had last year because the vampire Frank Gore is now on the team, and we'll see what P. Ryan can contribute. And I don't know. Everywhere Frank Gore's gone, the running back who's been with him hasn't delivered the types of numbers that we'd hoped for.
Vampire. For what it's worth, Aaron Jones, this tier again is Aaron Jones, Chris Carson, Josh Jacobs, James Conner, Melvin Gordon, and Todd Gurley. Aaron Jones, Melvin Gordon, and Todd Gurley were toward the bottom of the touches list, whereas Chris Carson and James Conner ranked pretty high. Both were, Chris Carson and Josh Jacobs ranked pretty high. Both were top 10. James Conner is a total wild card. I didn't even look at 2019 for him. He left like 3 games with injury, but he was on pace in 2018 for 333 touches, which was, really high. So I do want to know how you guys kind of, look at that and say, well, Chris Carson's probably going to get more touches than Aaron Jones, yet never gets drafted ahead of him. Josh Jacobs probably going to get more touches than Aaron Jones. You have some guys who have, I think, kind of like low to medium touch potential in this group. It's a little scary, which is hence the high risk.
It's true. Every time I think of James Conner, I think about how the Steelers didn't bring in heavy competition for him. I mean, I was thrilled when they drafted Anthony McFarland, but is Anthony McFarland really going to take 10 touches away from him each week? I think they left themselves in a position where James Conner has to be their running back, at least their lead guy to start the year. I don't know how much they believe in Benny Snell, but you watch Benny Snell play, he's okay. Jalen Samuels really fell off after last year. I think that I think the Steelers painted themselves in a corner, and until they add another solid back to their room, I'm anticipating them giving Conner the type of workload that we're looking for from a 3rd-round fantasy running back pick.
There was a report in The Athletic over the weekend I forget, it's Mark something who covers the Steelers for The Athletic.
Polly?
I think so. He was breaking down the depth chart, and he had a note in there on Benny Snell that he could be the sleeper of this group, and that if something were to happen to Connor, so I'm paraphrasing, if something would happen to Connor, that he could be what Connor was replacing Le'Veon Bell a couple of years ago. So I think when you look at Snell last year, it's one of those things where it's almost like the entire Steelers offense. Did he really show you who he is? So, with a healthy Roethlisberger, that could be something that helps Snell. But I think Connor is a great value pick. I think he's got the chance, if he's healthy, to be a top 10 running back. But health is clearly something that has to be taken into account with him and with Carson. I mean, Carson now, it's 2 of the last 3 years. He hasn't been able to finish the season. So we talk about Dalvin Cook and his injury history, and maybe Josh Jacobs as well. Carson hasn't been able to make it through a season 2 or 3 years. So, that's something to take into account when you look at him. Hopefully he's fine. Did the Seahawks tell us how they feel about Chris Carson this offseason in a good way or a bad way? With Carlos Hyde's addition and DJ Dallas, are those guys that are going to just be similar to Frank Gore? Are they going to ruin, Carson enough that his upside is not there? Or are they just, guys that Dallas from a rookie standpoint, but more so Hyde from, a guy coming off his first 1,000-yard campaign as a result of just falling into a good situation? So it's hard to say. I think Carson's in a good spot. He's a good number 2 running back, but I don't know if he's somebody that you want to take ahead of these guys in PPR, just given the fact that he hasn't topped 40 catches yet in the season.
By the way, I'm aware, when I talked about the touches, I'm aware that Melvin Gordon and Todd Gurley are on different teams this year than they were last year, but I still think the touch concerns are there. Last question about this group. Obviously, you're super excited to draft the elite New York style cheese pizzas of McCaffrey, Elliott, Barkley, Kamara, Cook. You're very excited about Sanders, Mixon, Drake, Eckler, Henry, Chubb, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Now we have some personal preferences in there, sure. What's your level of excitement for this group of Jones, Carson, Jacobs, Conner, Gordon, Gurley?
Completely dependent on where you get them. Like in the Scott Fish Bowl, James Conner fell to me in the 6th round. I was doing cartwheels.
Yeah.
If he's there in the 4th round of a regular draft, including Chris Carson, if he's there in the 4th round, I am thrilled. I'm a little nervous in the 3rd round to take those guys. I have a few of them ranked as 3rd round picks, but it feels a little bit suspect, and I usually take a wide receiver in that range instead. But if any of these guys fall into the 4th or 5th, I'm thrilled.
Yeah, I'm taking Jacobs around too, so he's in a different category for me.
All righty. All right, let's go to the next tier of very good. What did I have for this one here? So this is headlined by Le'Veon Bell. Fettuccine Alfredo. This is the Fettuccine Alfredo group here. Can be very good, but also very risky. Very similar to the cheese fries, actually. But Usually fettuccine Alfredo is kind of crappy. Like you have to go to a very good restaurant, I think, to get good you agree, Jamie?
I do.
Yeah, right? Like you have to go to a really good Italian place or just do not get it. Which maybe a lot of people
I
are
hate
going
the
to
fact
feel.
that I agree with you, but I do.
Yeah, a lot of people might feel that way about this group of Le'Veon Bell, David Johnson, DeAndre Swift, Cam Akers, and Leonard Fournette. It's Le'Veon Bell, David Johnson, DeAndre Swift, Cam Akers, Leonard Fournette. Note, Dave apparently likes DeAndre Swift better than Jonathan Taylor.
And Cam Akers, apparently.
Correct.
In PPR, yeah. Yeah, oh yeah, in both, actually. Now this tier, Taylor is in this tier in non-PPR, but in PPR he is not. So Bell, David Johnson, DeAndre Swift, Cam Akers, Leonard Fournette. Heath, what is this tier for you?
I agree with, I don't even totally disagree with David Johnson or with Le'Veon Bell falling into this tier. I think he and Johnson and Fournette all kind of fit together in that they could have very good years, but there's more risk than there is with the group above them. I don't see that same type of upside with Swift or Akers, really. I wouldn't have them in this tier. This is actually where I'd have Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And it's also not too far from where I'd put Kareem Hunt.
So Heath's not going to have Clyde Edwards-Helaire in any of his leagues this year because he's not going to make it to the round.
Actually, I already have him in one of my leagues because my team sucked and I had the first overall pick in my dynasty draft and I took him. And so I got him on one team. That will be the only team that I have him
It'll
on.
be the only team that you have him on. I sit corrected. I'm looking at upside for these guys. And I think that in the case of all of them, I think they can all probably figure their way to 1,200 yards total in some way or another. In the case of Swift, I don't look at Swift as someone that can help you in week 1 or week 2. I think it's going to take him a little while, kind of like it took Miles Sanders a little while. Cam Akers might be able to beat DeAndre Swift to the starting job with his team than Swift with the Lions because just the competition there. I mean, look, it's not amazing competition either way for either running back, but Akers just might have a little bit of an edge to get there first. We got to see how that shakes out in training camp. And we got to see how David Johnson looks in training camp. If he ends up looking great, then he might actually pop up a tier because of the opportunity that he's got to play a lot. Bill O'Brien does love to run the football. I think part of the reason why they got Cooks is to make sure that they've got speed on the field, whether Fuller plays or not. That keeps the safeties back. I already talked about that with Jacobs earlier on the pod. I think that there is some upside with David Johnson, but you know what the downside is too, which is he gets hurt or he's not fast and he gets 3.3 yards per carry and you have to pray that he finds the end zone every week. So that's why he's in this group with everybody else. I think Heath said it best. Bell, David Johnson, Leonard Fournette, they can all be painted with the same brush. You know their names. They've all been great before. Who knows if they'll be even in a position to do as well again. And with Swift and Akers, it's just looking forward with them and hoping that they end up being the lead workhorses for their respective teams.
Adam, can you pull up go ahead.
No, I'm saying everything Dave said, I would apply to Jonathan Taylor. You know, if you're going to put Swift and Akers in the category of looking for upside, Taylor probably has it more so than both of them, just given the team that he's going to play for and the pedigree that he has coming out of Wisconsin. So I think he's going to have an opportunity to. I'm sorry?
Even in PPR?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I don't know if in the offenses that those guys play in, if we're going to see them catch the ball at a high level right away. You know, that may happen eventually, but you know, they have to come in and prove themselves comparatively to guys who have already proven themselves. You know, Kerryon Johnson with Swift is almost waiting for an injury, which has happened every year of his career. So Swift can clearly take over the lead role if Johnson goes down. And Akers still has to prove he's better than both Darrell Henderson and, for what it's worth, Malcolm Brown. I think he will be, but I think Mac is going to be a roadblock for Jonathan Taylor early in the season as well. But I think his situation where they've already talked about they're happy rotating the guys early. And then I think if Ben were here, he would tell you, and I agree with that, Taylor's going to prove he's better than Marlon Mack. And my concern is I like Nyheim Hines. I think I've said that, you know, enough times. I really wonder because what we saw from Marlon Mack as a rookie was they used him more in the passing game for the Colts. If they will sort of shift Mack maybe into that role a little bit, as we see with Phillip Rivers in his career, throwing to his running backs, and then maybe Mack is the third down guy and not necessarily Nyheim Hines. But I think Taylor is going to be the lead running back for the Colts sooner rather than later. He belongs in this tier. I would probably take him ahead of all the guys in this tier, to be honest with you. I just think the upside for him is not necessarily round 3 where Ben is taking him, but in that round 4 or 5 range. I think that's where Jonathan Taylor goes. And I think if things click for him, he will be the best of this group by far.
Heath, What's eating there?
Cough drop.
Oh, okay.
I could just cough.
It was very sly. He was like,
I was really disappointed. I thought Jamie or Adam would jump in with the speed score, 1 inch shorter, 15 pounds heavier, better running back, Ben Gretsch. I argued. Can we bring this up on the Twitch on Tuesday night and just tell him that Dave doesn't like Jonathan Taylor so we can hear that again?
I would be happy to. My pleasure. Okay, so what does this group just in general represent to you? Because you have to make some tough decisions if you want one of these guys, Le'Veon Bell, David Johnson, Swift, Akers, Fournette, and if we want to throw Jonathan Taylor in there. Okay, you're talking about T.Y. Hilton and Terry McLaurin and maybe even Amari Cooper if you look at ADP, and Mark Andrews and Zach Ertz, some very good players at other positions. So how much of a priority are these running backs in this team?
Not. These are the running backs you're looking at if you don't take enough running backs early on in your draft. Like if you look at the running backs in this tier and the tier after, and you don't want them in your lineup, then you should commit to drafting at least 2 running backs with your first 3 picks. So you don't even have to dabble with these guys.
I think the thing with this group is if you take, because this is really, the type of guy you want to take as your third back. If you need security and a high floor, you're probably looking at guys like Bell and Johnson and Fournette, the guys that have done it before, should be locked into lead roles on their team. And, again, have relatively good opportunities if things go right. If you're looking for upside, then you're taking Taylor Swift or, I said that on purpose, Taylor Swift or Akers. But I'm with Heath. I think Kareem Hunt in PPR absolutely belongs in this range too. He showed us that last year when he came back from suspension. Hopefully he gets a little bit bigger role in terms of carrying the ball after a full, whatever the offseason has been, but a full, opportunity to be with the team. So Hunt is in this range also for me in PPR as well. So I think when you look at these guys, if you go 2 backs, 2 receivers, some combination of that, and you're looking for your third running back here, upside again is the rookies. Security is probably the veteran guys that, hopefully don't fall off the map because of either guys behind them or their coaches not liking them.
So let me challenge you, I guess, a little bit on Kareem Hunt. 43 carries, 37 catches in 8 games. I get it. Like, that's nice. 74 catches. It's really good per 16 games. But that's a really small workload. And why would he be here and not Tariq Cohen?
He only scored, with that really small workload, he only scored 3 touchdowns, I think, in those 8 games.
Yeah, he did.
And he was still easily a top 20 running back. And we're sitting around running back 24 right now.
Yeah, but in that role, he has no chance of being a star. And obviously, if Nick Chubb gets hurt, Kareem Hunt's going to be potential fantasy winner. But if that's just his role of, 86 carries and 74 catches, that's Tariq Cohen.
And I tried to I think I've got Tariq Cohen very close to this in the projections. I think they're very close, other than the fact that Hunt has league winning upside if something happens to Chubb.
Well, Hunt would also get carries though. I mean, Tariq Cohen's not going to get the same type of carries that Kareem Hunt has the capabilities of.
Right.
Yeah. But he didn't
I think when we were discussing Chubb, we didn't mention the Stefanski thing could mean that there's just more carries for Chubb and Hunt both.
Yeah.
I find it hard that there's going to be more for Chubb if Hunt is getting more work.
I don't think you can have Hunt in this range in your tiers if you've got Chubb in your first 2 tiers. I just don't think there's enough to go around. I agree with you guys that they could theoretically run the ball a little bit more, play at a slower pace, lean on those running backs. It's what I would do if I were in charge of the Browns. But I can't see how you can have Chubb in a top 12 type of ranking and have Kareem Hunt in the conversation in around 24th overall among running backs.
Well,
I find it hard to believe that that's where they're both going to end up being, even in full PPR.
Well, I mean, over 16 games last year, that's where they would have been.
Right. Maybe one of these things is wrong in my projections, but I've got Chubb at about 1,500 rushing yards, 150 catching, receiving, 11 touchdowns.
Yeah,
your lips.
Again, going back to him versus Jacobs, as Adam brought up the point. If you look at the way Chubb finished the season and how Jacobs was the majority of the season, they're very similar.
Well, let me give you these numbers. All right,
And then I got one more number after that.
Last 8 games of the year for Chubb and Hunt. This is when Hunt came back. Nick Chubb was the number 16 PPR running back, and Kareem Hunt was the number 17 PPR running back. Now, Chubb, just based on the workload he had, has a lot of room to grow from there because he had 144 carries, which was second most in the NFL in that stretch, and only 2 rushing touchdowns. Hunt was the number 17 running back, but here's the problem I see with that is like, that's great, but it's kind of like it feels like a ceiling. If his workload does not increase, it's no involvement in the running game, very, very little involvement in the running game, and all you're banking on is these catches. And we are talking about running backs right now that are going in like the 4th round. Can you imagine taking Kareem Hunt in the 4th round over the guys?
I think this group spans a few rounds, because I know Dave likes Swift. Swift is not going in the 4th round.
I agree. He's this range. You'll see it on the site. It's rounds 4 and 5. And you might disagree with Swift in round 5, and that's okay. I don't mind taking him then.
No, and I get, again, it's your tiers. You're going to tell people to take them where he should go. I don't think we're going to see ADP reflect Swift in round 5 unless Kerryon Johnson gets hurt. So I think we're going to see
round 5 if Kerryon gets
hurt. He'll go higher. But I don't think we're going to see Swift if he's coming in as the second guy. These are more like round 6 guys. And again, Jonathan Taylor is probably more of a round 5 guy than he is a round 4 guy. Even though Ben's taking round 3. So I think it's going to all be sort of, dependent on format. And I know we're talking PPR here, but Hunt is one of those guys that's almost like a 1.5, 2 round swing for me. I don't know where you have him, Heath, but PPR versus non-PPR, because I do think PPR favors what he should be able to do. I'm counting on Hunt getting more work in the run game, so that's why I'm a little bit down on Chubb, a little bit higher on Hunt in this format. I do think that the role that he had in the passing game will be somewhat similar to what we saw last year, even though it's a new coaching staff. The one thing about it is, and like you said, Adam, league winning upside, this is a former rushing champion. He's essentially, 2.5 years removed from leading the NFL in rushing. And what we saw from him in 2018 before he, got kicked out of the league was, another strong performance. So he's still young enough. He's in a great situation. Offensive line is going to be great. If the system is what we expect it to be, Stefanski bringing what he did in Minnesota to Cleveland, I think they're going to use both backs. So I do think both guys have an opportunity to be top 15 caliber type of guys, more so Chubb than Hunt because of the touchdown potential. But I think if you're getting Kareem Hunt anywhere after round 5 in PPR, you're going to be thrilled about it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So round 5, I guess, would be the sweet spot. And that's where he's going. He's the late round 5 pick right now in NFC average draft position, which is very, very high on running backs. The next group is the number 3 running backs with less upside. I did not have a really clever food for this one. If you guys have one, feel free.
It's number 3 running backs with high upside.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. This is the one I didn't have a good food name for. Mark Ingram, Jonathan Taylor, David Montgomery, Devin Singletary, and Raheem Mostert. Mark Ingram.
These are the foods that you've never had before, but they have potential to be your favorite foods.
Except Mark Ingram, which would be...
No, I'm talking fantasy upside. I still think that Mark Ingram has some good upside.
Yeah, but you're
talking about like Mark Ingram as a food?
We've all had Mark Ingram before.
Right, that's what I'm saying. He's pizza. We've had it, but he's great. Mark Ingram, Jonathan Taylor, David Montgomery.
Maybe he's a pizza with a cauliflower crust. I haven't quite had that yet. Maybe it could be your new favorite.
Okay, so
probably not because cauliflower crust stinks. Go ahead, Adam.
There are a lot of touches available here. I mean, David Montgomery, Devin Singletary, like in his last 6 games, I think he had the 2nd most carries in the NFL, 4th most carries, something like that. They really rode him. What do you think about this tier, Dave? This should be your number 3 running back with high upside.
I like viewing these guys strictly as number 3 in PPR. I would move Ingram up in non-PPR. I still think he can do it, especially in that offense. So full PPR, these are the guys that you kind of hope fall into your lap in the round 6-ish range. I'm not going to fight with you on whether or not Kareem Hunt belongs in this tier. Obviously, Jamie thinks he belongs at least in this tier, if not a little bit higher. Heath probably the same. I'm not there yet. But I do think these guys all have a chance to be strong contributors to your squad, usable as a flex in case you're thin on receiver or tight end in PPR, and definitely great bench depth.
Okay. Again, it was Ingram, Taylor, Montgomery, Singletary, and Mostert. Who's your favorite for Dave? It's Mark Ingram. Jamie, Heath, who's your favorite in this group of 5?
Probably Montgomery.
No, it's Taylor You like Montgomery over
well,
Taylor?
again, I think Taylor's in a different group.
Right. So why don't you throw Taylor out? Because I know you love him.
Yeah, it'd probably be Montgomery. You talk about what the volume could be for him again after what he did in his rookie season. Hopefully they're still going to stick with him. Every indication seems to be that that's the case. He's not going to be a huge factor on passing downs. But again, if he can get to that maybe 30 threshold, that would be something that I think you look at and say, okay, he can build off what he did last year. I don't think he's as bad as what he showed us in his rookie campaign. So if you're saying 250 plus carries again, I'll buy into that in this spot.
And on that same note, then Jamie is just get ready for the Jamie giggle because he's going to love this. Tareek Cohen should be in this tier.
I don't mind it. I think, with Cam now, James White potentially too. They're both going to be the chance for, 70 plus catches if things go their way. And so that's hard to overlook, and especially what Cohen showed us 2 years ago.
I think they're in the next tier for Dave, which is number 3 running backs with less upside. So, Heath, can you kind of buy that explanation that Tareek Cohen does not have as much upside as Devin Singletary, David Montgomery, Mark Ingram, it's Raheem Mostert?
I would 100% buy that in half PPR. It's not even close in non-PPR. I don't know that I necessarily believe that David Montgomery and Devin Singletary have top 10 upside. And I do think Tareek Cohen has top 15 upside. So I don't know, in PPR at least. So I don't know what the big distinction and upside would be in that format between them.
Okay.
They just have to have those touchdown years. That's the thing. Because they're going to catch the ball. It's what we saw from James White 2 years ago. It's what we saw from Tareek Cohen 2 years ago. Or, White 2 or 3 years ago, when he's done it multiple times. But, it's when those guys are converting, end zone opportunities when they get them. And that's what makes them go from good in PPR to great in PPR. And you're like, oh, I wish I would have drafted this guy sooner. Or in some cases, when they let you down like they did a year ago, man, it's tough to trust those guys even when they're catching the ball at such a high rate.
All right, we're going to take a break here. When we come back, it's peanut butter jelly time. That is the name of the next tier. Not a lot of upside, but, it's peanut butter and jelly. You know what you're getting. Always. I had peanut butter and jelly this afternoon. So anyway, that's coming up right after this break on Fantasy Football Today. I have a peanut butter and jelly question for you. You got 2 pieces of bread. Do you just put peanut butter all on one bread, on one slice, and jelly on the other? Or do you put both on both? How do you make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich?
I used to be just one on one on the other, but my wife has always done peanut butter on both sides because she says it makes the jelly less soggy, I guess, or drippy. So she's got me into doing that. So now I do peanut butter on both sides.
That's interesting. Dave, nothing to contribute here?
No, I just usually slop. I don't even get to the second piece of bread. Usually I take out a piece of bread, I put on peanut butter, put on the jelly, and then I just eat it like a taco. Like a one piece of bread. And then I just go and get the next piece of bread, and it's a machine, and I weigh 300 pounds.
I feel really left out of this entire food conversation because basically like everything that you have suggested as a food type right now, I've not eaten in like a year. So it's fun.
Oh, it's all gluten stuff?
I think every single thing you've chosen so far may have gluten in it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm a pro gluten. Heath, when you make a sandwich, how do you cut it? Square, like rectangle, triangle?
I've never cut a sandwich.
You just
even when I ate sandwiches a long time ago, I don't know why I would cut a sandwich.
Easier to eat.
It's not that hard to eat a sandwich. you just eat the same. Like I understand like you cut them for kids maybe, but I've never cut a sandwich for myself.
I could see Adam. Not only does he cut it into triangles, because that's definitely an Adam Mazer thing, he cuts the crust off for himself too.
Small triangles too.
I like rectangles.
Double triangle for Adam, so he's got 4 little triangles.
My wife is adamant about the triangles, so like I'm almost afraid to cut rectangles in front of her. And I like the crust. She does not. Do you guys eat the ends of the loaf?
Yes,
No.
baker does.
No,
I like
The
that.
heel?
Oh, the heel, whatever you want to call it. Sure.
My older son, that's his favorite part of the bread. So he always eats the heel.
That
I feel
is
like I'm saving calories
bizarre.
by eating that part.
You think so?
Smaller.
It's probably the healthiest part. All right. Anyway, this is the peanut butter and jelly tier. Number 3 running backs with less upside. Kareem Hunt, Ronald Jones, Zach Moss, J.K. Dobbins, Tareek Cohen, James White, Keyshawn Vaughn, and Marlon Mack. Kareem Hunt, Ronald Jones, Zach Moss, J.K. Dobbins, Tariq Cohen, James White, Keyshawn Vaughn, and Marlon Mack. Where's Damian Williams?
No kidding.
Come on, Dave.
I think we missed him in the number 3 running backs with high upside portion. I think that's where he was.
Where's Ronald Jones too?
He's in this one.
He is here.
Ronald Jones is in this tier. And he might be moving up because I'm kind of seeing what maybe the Bucs are seeing with him, but that's another story. These are guys where things could go right, things could go wrong. I disagree about them being peanut butter and jelly. They might be. I don't know.
Well, Dave, you think peanut butter and jelly is a taco, so I don't really. I don't really know.
Fair point.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's definitely at least one thing wrong, one big thing wrong with everybody's situation in this tier, and it's obvious. In the case of like Kareem Hunt, he's splitting. J.K. Dobbins, he's a rookie. Ronald Jones, we don't know how long he's going to hang on to the job for, even though we think he's pretty good. So. I think it's built into their draft value because now we're talking about the middle of the draft where you're getting these guys and there's not as much risk and there's still some good reward because if the thing that is wrong with them at the onset of the season goes away, then they're going to be outstanding.
I would disagree with J.K. Dobbins being described as low upside in any way.
Yep.
I think there's a chance that he just takes the job from Mark Ingram in the second half. But if something happens to Mark Ingram, he has enormous upside.
Yeah, I'm worried that they've got too many running backs in Baltimore.
I think it's the same with Kareem Hunt. If those guys get into starting opportunities, they're going to be top 5 caliber type of running backs, just given the offenses that they're going to play in. So I wouldn't necessarily label them as low upside type of players. I think they certainly have high. And no, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm saying the way Adam described it. So. I think these guys have the chance to be, superstar caliber, but you can't draft them higher than this. That's kind of the reason why you have to take them in this range because, like Dave said, there is something that's kind of in the way. And I do think that Damian Williams belongs in this. We got a question, I think it was 2 weeks ago. Would you take Edwards-Helaire in round 2 and round 6? And I think I said yes. I mean, that's where we're talking about these guys right now. So I know I'm on the high end. Like Heath, I know would take Damian Williams here, and Dave would take Edwards-Helaire earlier. I don't think it's a bad idea to take both because you may end up with, just a great opportunity to have a superstar running back. I do think Damian Williams is going to have some very good weeks and probably earlier in the season by comparison to what his role will be.
A lot of people might be listening to this saying, what, Kareem Hunt, Ronald Jones, Zach Moss, J.K. Dobbins, these guys are number 3s? No, I want them to be number 4s. In PPR, though, I mean, I think they very well could be number 3 running backs for you, and then you grab Tevin Coleman, Damian Williams. Damian Williams is going a little earlier, but some of the other names we're going to mention because in PPR you might only start 2 running backs a week. It might have been your first 2 picks. Then you go receiver, Dak Prescott, Zach. You build out the rest of your roster, and you're not all that dependent on running backs. At least not when you draft. You pick guys up off the waiver wire or whatever. So I could see that.
I'd also put Mostert in this group too. I think Mostert, given the trade request and not knowing what's going to happen, depending on when you're drafting, but they're also going to use a lot of running backs too.
All right.
I would have Mostert and Tevin Coleman in the same tier.
High-end backups is the next group, and I'm calling that mac and cheese. Why? Because, let's say you just brought home dinner, but you tripped on your front step and you threw your food all over the place and everything spilled everywhere and you don't have dinner anymore. You make some mac and cheese. That is just a high-end backup option. No issues. Matt Breida, Jordan Howard, Darius Geis, Sony Michel, Alexander Madison, Darrell Henderson, Damian Williams. Come on, Dave. Move them up.
All right.
We got to move them up.
Sorry.
Phillip Lindsay, Antonio Gibson, and Nyheim Hines. A lot of names. Let me read it again. Breida, Jordan Howard, Geis, Michel, Madison, Darrell Henderson, Damian Williams, Phillip Lindsay, Antonio Gibson, and Nyheim Hines. So, Heath, just bench depth here? Solid backups?
Yeah, and I'm since we did this with mine on the quarterback rankings, I don't feel as bad doing this. Did we miss Kerryon Johnson?
Nope, he's a lower tier for me. I am not a Kerryon fan.
But most of these guys, I would prefer.
Oh no, Kerryon's at the very bottom of this tier.
I missed them. Okay, that's my fault. I missed them.
What's that?
He's the last name on the list. Adam didn't read him.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, my bad. Kerryon Johnson is in this group. Last one.
Then I agree completely with everything except for Damian Williams being 2 tiers too low.
I probably would put Geis in the tier above too, just because if he's ever going to be healthy, he's got league winning upside.
But they're going to share. There's going to be so much sharing in Washington. He would have to be outstanding in training camp, and he'd have to stay healthy. And that's just to fend off Adrian Peterson from getting work. I think Gibson's going to have a significant role. It's not to say that Gibson and Geis couldn't play at the same time, because I think the offense is moving in a creative direction in Washington, but I don't know. I think the Red Tails could be mixing and matching running backs all year long.
So do not draft a Dolphins running back to be your starter. Do not draft Sony Michel.
Unless you're going 0 RB, which I don't recommend this year so much as in previous years. I might have recommended it in PPR. I won't do it this year. But if you are inclined to do that, Jordan Howard, you can use him. Week 1 against the Patriots, they reshuffled their linebackers. Could be okay.
Okay, so that is the high-end backups. Now we go to the solid backups, which is the frozen chicken nuggets tier. All right, we dropped all of our food. We ran out of mac and cheese. Just throw some frozen chicken nuggets in the toaster oven. 12 minutes on 375 degrees. No big deal.
I'm intrigued that PB&J is ahead of both mac and cheese and frozen chicken nuggets for you, since PB&J takes less work than those other two foods to prepare.
It's a great point. And they are better.
And there's no chance that you make frozen chicken nuggets and they make your day. These guys, you could draft them late in the draft and one thing happens and they could win you your league.
That's right. Tony Pollard, Chase Edmonds, Tevin Coleman, Latavius Murray, and A.J. Dillon. It's true. They're all an injury away from being absolute studs.
We don't know about Dillon, really.
I'm speculating that they drafted Dillon for a reason, and that they probably don't love Jamal Williams.
Yeah, he'd be the guy.
All right. And then finally we have bench depth, which is I call it the salad tier. Raquel Armstead, Boston Scott.
I got to something I can eat.
Congratulations, Heath. You get what's left.
This is what 0 RB feels like, guys.
Raquel Armstead, Boston Scott, Duke Johnson, Darrington Evans, Josh Kelly, Anthony McFarland, Damian Harris, DJ Dallas, Justin Jackson, Carlos Hyde, and Malcolm Brown. I know there's a lot there, but let me ask, why are Tony Pollard and Chase Edmonds in the tier above this group that has Raquel Armstead and Darrington Evans?
Because I think if Pollard and Edmonds got the opportunity to be lead backs for their teams, they wouldn't be quite as good as the running backs that are there, but they could still be 70% of that. Whereas I don't know if Rock Armstead's going to be as good as Leonard Fournette was last year.
Yeah. So that's for one game.
Yeah, but I don't know if he could do it week in and week out.
All right, cool.
I think Pollard would be awesome if Zeke were to miss time and Pollard was the main back in Dallas.
I think Edmonds and Pollard personally should be up in the Madison tier and maybe just a little bit ahead of him.
Well, the only reason why they were ahead of Madison at one point, but when Dalvin Cook, started talking about holdouts, I think that pushed Madison's value up a little bit more.
All right, so Dave, let's talk about this. What's the deal with Damian Williams? Why aren't you feeling it?
I feel like I've got to jump in the time machine and, just spout off what Jamie said right after the draft when he was going nuts for Edwards-Helaire. Damian Williams has never gotten the job done in the regular season unless it was late in the season and then in the playoffs. They drafted Edwards-Helaire. It's the most draft capital that Andy Reid has used on a running back. He fits into that offense really, really well. And if Edwards-Helaire has a really good camp and Damian Williams does what he's done every year of his career up to this point, it's going to be a runaway for CEH to have a big season.
Runaway. I like it. Nice pun. Let's have some dinner, everybody. Some salad, some gluten, a lot of gluten, more gluten. And I think
you're a jerk.
I am making some type of chicken dish tonight. So I'm going to go get on that. And we'll talk to you on Twitch, twitch.com/FF Today, 7 p.m. Eastern, Tuesday night. For Dave, for Jamie, for Heath, I'm Adam. See you there.
Want more of the Fantasy Football Today podcast and nonstop year-round fantasy advice? It's simple. Hit the subscribe button and hang with us all throughout the year.